Imagine waking up one day and discovering that everything you believe to be just, humane, and sacred is swept away by a dark tide of bloody rituals, blood-curdling divine commands, and a society where compassion was conspicuous by its absence. What you're about to witness isn't a modern horror story, but a brutal portrait of biblical antiquity, where the boundaries between the divine and the monstrous are blurred. Before embarking on this revelatory journey, subscribe to the channel now and turn on your notifications. This isn't just content, it's an unfiltered look at the hidden side of history. You're about to learn what they didn't tell you in school or in church. This knowledge isn't comfortable, but it's necessary. Prepare yourself. There's no turning back. Imagine waking up to a world where your 12-year-old daughter is no longer yours, but a commodity sold to a man 3 times her age. A world where her worth is measured not by her dreams, but by the silver exchanged for her hand. This wasn't a dystopian tale. It was law. It was culture. It was the norm in the ancient world described by the Old Testament. Women, mere extensions of their father's will, transferred to their husband's command like cattle. There was no room for choice, no space for protest, just submission wrapped in tradition. In the days of the patriarchs, a man's wealth wasn't only in land or livestock, it was in wives. As many as he could afford, as many as he could keep fed. Abraham, revered and righteous, had Sarah, but he also had Hagar, and with her came jealousy, banishment, and divine intervention. Jacob's tale reads like a twisted drama, tricked into marrying the wrong sister, bargaining another 7 years for the one he loved, then fathering children with both their handmaids. 4 women, 12 sons, and a legacy built on deceit, rivalry, and silent suffering. And this chaos was considered sacred. Solomon, the king of wisdom, had 700 wives and 300 concubines. This wasn't love. It was diplomacy sealed with skin. Princesses traded for peace, for treaties, for power. But those unions brought more than alliances. They brought gods of wood and stone, pagan altars, and the spiritual decay of a kingdom that once stood invincible. His heart, once devoted, was pulled in 1,000 directions, crumbling under the weight of his own lust and ambition. And yet, no one stopped him. No one dared. Women were silenced before they spoke. Inheritance, forbidden. Autonomy, imagined. During menstruation they were cast out, untouchable, unclean, unworthy. 7 days in isolation, as if punished by nature itself. And when it came to marriage, their consent meant nothing. A father's deal, a husband's right, and a system that stamped purity like a price tag. The bride price? 50 silver coins. The exact value of a slave. That's all it took to buy a life, a future, a body. In debt or in war, daughters were currency. Sold to settle accounts, to restore honor, to maintain peace. And if sold as slaves, they had fewer rights than male servants. Exodus 21 made that brutally clear. If her husband died, her fate hung in the hands of his closest male relative. Would he marry her or cast her aside? Either way, she had no say, no voice, just hope that her new master had mercy, or at least restraint. But the shadows stretch even further. Genesis tells of celestial beings, the sons of God, who looked upon the daughters of men with desire. They descended, they took, and from that unholy union, the Nephilim were born. Giants, warriors, beings of legend and terror, towering over men feared by all. Some said they stood over 10 feet tall. Others said their rage could crush armies. They were not myths. They were the living nightmares of the ancient world. In the apocryphal book of Enoch, these angels shared forbidden knowledge, secrets of the forge, of enchantment, of the stars. They taught men how to kill, how to seduce, how to manipulate the heavens. With them came the corruption of the earth, and among their monstrous offspring, the Anakim, the Rephaim, and the Emim ruled entire regions. Their presence was so terrifying that Israelites felt like grasshoppers in their wake. And still, these giants walked as if chosen, untouched by divine wrath for a time. Entire civilizations lived under the constant dread of plagues, each one more devastating than the last. These weren't merely natural disasters, they were divine signatures. The Nile turning to blood, frogs invading every home, lice and flies darkening the skies, cattle falling dead overnight. Each plague a message, loud and cruel, obedience or obliteration. And at the heart of it all, an invisible hand deciding who would live and who would drown in sorrow. Mothers watched their children rot, their lands decay, their gods crumble. And still, more would come. When the final blow struck Egypt, it came not with thunder but silence, followed by the anguished cries of thousands. The death of every firstborn, from princes to prisoners, left no house untouched. Grief spread like wildfire. This wasn't punishment, it was eradication. And when the Israelites fled, they didn't leave behind a city, they escaped a graveyard. This was a God who parted seas and crushed armies, who fed with manna and struck with leprosy. A God feared, not just worshipped, revered but not always loved. Justice was not blind, it was bloodthirsty. Adultery, death by stoning. Working on the Sabbath, death. Disrespecting parents, death. And not by strangers. The executioners were fathers, brothers, husbands. The first stone had to be thrown by someone close, someone trusted. Imagine a father lifting his arm against his own son. A husband raising a rock against his wife. It wasn't justice, it was doctrine. And the community didn't watch. They participated. To abstain was to betray the law. Mercy was seen as weakness. The sacrificial system wasn't symbolic, it was slaughter. The temple floors ran red with blood. Animals were bled, dismembered, burned. The stench of flesh and smoke clung to Jerusalem like a second skin. Every sin demanded blood. Every mistake needed a life. The poor offered birds, the rich offered bulls, and priests walked barefoot through streams of crimson, their hands soaked, their robes stained. Forgiveness didn't come easy. It came screaming, writhing, dying. And somewhere in that ritual, holiness was supposed to bloom. But even that wasn't the worst of it. Jephthah, a warrior of Israel, made a vow. If he won the battle, he would offer the first thing that greeted him as a burnt offering. And when he returned home, dancing with joy, his daughter, his only child, ran to him with a tambourine. He tore his clothes. She begged for 2 months to mourn her virginity. And then, she died by fire, sacrificed by the one who should have protected her. There was no divine intervention, no ram in the thicket, just smoke, ash, and silence. Further still, there was the Valley of Hinnom, a cursed place where children were laid in the arms of Moloch, a bronze idol with a furnace for a belly. Drums pounded to muffle the screams as babies burned alive. Their mothers turned their faces away. Their fathers stood proud. These were offerings made in hopes of rain, prosperity, power. This valley became so defiled that Jesus himself would use its name, Gehenna, as a metaphor for hell, a place of fire, of torment, of regret without end. And still, the supernatural reigned. The Ark of the Covenant, sacred and lethal, struck men dead for merely touching it. Whole cities fell to tumors and plagues after daring to capture it. Visions of prophets showed creatures with 4 faces, wheels within wheels, eyes that never closed. Mountains shook, smoke bellowed, angels appeared as men and vanished into fire. Reality bent under the weight of divine presence. This was not mythology. This was their world, and it was terrifying. Now you've seen it, unfiltered, raw, and terrifying. The sacred texts aren't just stories of love, hope, or miracles. They are filled with shadows, with cries that echo through time, with blood that soaked the ground in the name of holiness. You've walked through ancient streets where innocence was bartered, where justice had no mercy, and where the line between divine command and human cruelty was razor thin. This isn't just history, it's a mirror. And maybe, just maybe, it's time we stop looking away. If this journey shook you, stirred something inside you, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel and follow Jesus, not just the image we're used to, but the truth of who he is, even when it's uncomfortable. Seek him not for the ease, but for the transformation. This isn't about religion, it's about awakening, about tearing down false comforts and facing the divine with eyes wide open. Ask yourself, what kind of faith are you building? One that avoids the hard questions? Or one that dares to dig deep, even into the terrifying parts of Scripture? The God of the Old Testament wasn't safe. But he was sovereign, he was holy, and above all, he was real. That same God is calling you now. Not to fear, but to follow. Not to hide, but to surrender. There's power in knowledge, but there's transformation in truth. If this video opened your eyes, then let it open your heart. Speak out. Comment below. God is sovereign. Let the world see you're not ashamed of the truth. Let it be known that you're not looking for comfort. You're looking for Christ. Share this video, not because it's sensational, but because it's necessary. Someone out there needs to understand that faith isn't just worship songs and quiet prayers. Sometimes it's ashes, fire, and wrestling with the divine. Be the one who brings that light. My name is Oliver. I'm not a scholar. I'm not a priest. I'm just a man who refuses to ignore the truth no matter how hard it is to hear. If you're here, still watching, still feeling this, then you're like me. You want more. You're ready to go deeper. Thank you for walking with me through the darkness. Now let's keep walking toward the light. Until next time, stay strong, stay awake, and stay close.